All right, this is a recording for CAP045. This is going to be section 7.1. It begins on page 502 in your pre-algebra text for CAP045. So this is an introduction to percents, and first we want to talk about what the meaning of percent means. And if we look at the word percent and we just divide it up into its parts, it's per cent, right? Percent. And that means parts. Per means parts, and cent means of 100. So percent means parts per 100. So if we have 70%, what we actually have is 70 parts of 100. If we have 80%, we have 80 parts of 100, 80 out of 100. So it means any parts out of 100. So anytime you have a percent next to a number, a percent sign, it means that number per 100. So for example, on example 1 on page 503, it says 24% and change it to a fraction. Well, this percent has value. It just means parts of 100 or 1/100th. So this means 24 times 1 over 100. If we change the percent to 1 part over 100, then that would just be 24 hundredths, and we could reduce that to 6/25ths by dividing both of them by 4, right? So that's kind of a long way to show it. You can always just put the 24 over 100 and simplify. It just means the percent sign has value. It means 1/100th as a fraction or 1/100th as a decimal. And when it's sitting next to our number, it's multiplying that number times that fraction or decimal equivalent so that you get the fractional or decimal equivalent of the percent. So let's try that again. And then you try it. It says 30%. So we have 30%, which just means 30 times 1 over 100. So that would be 30 over 100, or 3/10ths, right? 3 parts of 10. 30 out of 100 is the same as 3 parts of 10. All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? Example 2, change 14 2/7% to a fraction. So if we have 14 2/7% and we want to change it to a fraction, what they're saying here is change the percent to a fraction. This percent, it is in fractional form as a percent, but it's not completely a fraction, a usable fraction, until we get rid of the percent. So what this actually means is 14 2/7 times 1/100th, because that percent, that's what it equals. It equals 1 over 100 as a fraction. So we do our fractional math here, and we go 7 times 14 plus 2, change our mixed number to an improper fraction. So 7 times 14 is 798 100/7, right? Times 1 over 100. And you can do the simplification. You can cancel the hundreds, and you end up with 1 over 7. So 14 2/7% is the same as 1 out of 7. If you got one question right on a 7-question quiz, you would earn yourself 14 2/7%. So that's what this means. Right? So you change your fraction, your mixed number, to an improper fraction and multiply by 1 over 100, because that's what the percent value means. In example 3 at the bottom of page 503, it says to change 28.4% to a fraction. So this is where you need to engage your rules around decimals and fractions, and this is 28 4/10ths of a percent, isn't it? If you change your decimal to a fractional equivalent, it's 4 parts of 10. So we have 28 4/10ths times 1/100th, right? 28 4/10ths times 1 over 100, the fractional equivalent of a percent sign. So you go 10 times 28 plus 4 would be 284 over 10. We're changing our mixed number to an improper fraction, and then we're going to multiply that by 20 over 100. You could do some simplification first, or you could multiply straight across and say 284 over 1,000, and then you could simplify that by dividing by 4, and that would be 71 over 2/50ths. 71 over 250. So if you took a 258 question test and got 71 right, you would score a 28 4/10% score. So take your decimal, change it to a mixed number, change that to an improper fraction, and then multiply by the percent equivalent of 1/100th to get it to, and then simplify to get it to be the final answer. All right. So that's changing percents to fractions using the fraction equivalent of 1/100th. Then you learn to change percents to a decimal on page 504. We have 23.25%, and we need to change it to a decimal. That means 23.25 times 1/100th as a decimal equivalent. Well, when we're timesing by 1/100th, we're actually dividing by 100, right? And so we're going to move our decimal place 2 places to the left to get our decimal equivalent of 0.235, right? 2 places to the left because 1/100th, right? We're in the 1/100th land, is dividing by 100, which there's 2 zeros in 100, so we're going to move our decimal place 2 places to the left. So when you change your percent to a decimal, you drop the percent sign and you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Let's try it again with 2.4%. So we have 2.4%. We're going to drop the decimals or the percent sign, and we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the left. So it's 0.024 is the decimal equivalent of 2.4%. Right? Pretty simple to do. Where they make it a little more difficult is like example 5. They say change 5.5% to a decimal. So you would want to change 5.5 to a decimal first. It'd be 5.5%. Drop the percent sign and move the decimal 2 places to the left. And now you have your decimal equivalent of the percent. It's 0.055 for 5.5%. Let's try that again. How about 6 3/4%? 6 3/4%. So you could change this to 6.75% because you change the 3/4 to 0.75. You can do the division, 3 divided by 4, or you might remember that 3/4, 3/4 is 0.75. It's a popular fraction. Drop the percent sign and move the decimal 2 places to the left. So you have 0.0675 as your decimal equivalent of 6 3/4%, right? Now on page 505, it goes, and we reverse the operation now, and we change a decimal to a percent. So if we move 2 places to the left to change our percent to a decimal, if we're going to go back and change our decimal to a percent, we need to move it 2 places to the right. So to change a decimal to percent, it says move the decimal point 2 places to the right and add the percent symbol. So for example 6, it has 0.0725. We want to change that to a percent. We're going to move our decimal 2 places to the right, and it's 7.25%. Let's try it again with the you try it. 0.0375. Change it to a percent. Move the decimal 2 places to the right, and it's 3.75%. Remember to add the percent sign. Okay, so pretty basic. Go back and forth with your decimal place, whether you're changing it from a percent to a decimal or a decimal to a percent. Example 7 asks you to change 1.025 to a percent. Move the decimal 2 places to the right, and it's 102.5%. And that should be right. At 1.025, you're getting all of something, 100% of it with that 1, and then another 2.5% of it. Let's try it again. How about 0.525 to change to a percent? You'd move it 2 places to the right. That's 52.5%. Okay, pretty basic. Now we want to change a fraction to a percent. So we need to first divide the numerator by the denominator and change it to a decimal, and then we can move the decimal 2 places to the right. So for example, if we have 5/8, we would take 5 and divide it by 8. You could do this on your calculator if you wanted to also, and you're going to get 0.625. So you're going to take 0.625 and you're going to move your decimal 2 places to the right and end up with 62.5%. 5 out of 8, 5/8, 5 out of 8 means you have 62.5% of the whole. If you got 5 right on an 8-question quiz, you would earn a 62.5% grade. Right? Another option is you can take your 5/8 and multiply it. You want to do a proportion method. How much is it over 100, right? So you could do your cross multiplication and division, and you're going to end up with 62.5%. So you could use your proportion method. 5/8 equals how much out of 100? 62.5%. So you can either divide it, move the decimal, or you can multiply and then divide. It's doing very similar things. All right. Sometimes you'll have to round your answers. Like in example 10, it says 4/13 to a percent. So if we take 4 and we divide it by 13, we're going to get 0.3076, and it's just going to keep going. So we're going to stop there and round to the nearest tenth. It says tenth of a percent. So we take the 0.3076. We move our decimal 2 places to the right. We have 30.76. We're going to round it to the nearest tenth, which is the 7th place. So the 6 makes that go up. So we have actually 30.8% approximately. 4/13 is 30.8%. Right? So practicing those rounding rules also. That's the end of section 7.1. Just what is a percent, representing it as parts of 100, changing percents to fractions and percents to decimals, and then decimals to percents and fractions to percents. Pretty basic stuff. The more you practice it, the easier it'll be for you, and you'll just do it very automatically. All right, we'll see you in the next video.